Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Flying with Overkill F-18C Hornet for DCS World. And today we're going to continue doing some updates to some of the previous videos as many things have changed since I created them initially. There is a link to the full playlist down in the description below if you are interested in learning the Hornet. Again, some of the videos may at this point be out of date, but they're certainly still qualifying enough to get you up and running and get the operation complete. There just may be a few tips and tricks and some new information on the screen that may not, be in those particular videos. So we are working through those, but it's going to take a minute because there's quite a few of them. So today what we're going to be focusing on is the TGP, the targeting pod, and the JHMCS, or Joint Helmet Mounted Queuing System, also known as JHMCS. And we're going to be seeing how the two can work in tandem with each other as well as independently to quickly acquire your targets and get a better idea of the battle area. This particular session will be focusing on air-to-ground mode. We won't be going into the air-to-air operations. I'll get to that at some point much later on down the road, but me personally, I'm a ground pounder, so, being the one recording the videos, I get to kind of pick. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into the TGP. We're going to take a look at some of the screens, take a look at the options, the displays, the information that's on the TGP. Then we'll go into a couple of tips and tricks with using the TGP, and then we'll bring the Joint Helmet Mounted Queuing System into the mix. So without further delay, change it up. Let's get in there. Alright, so starting back over here, the first thing I want to do is walk you guys through some controls that are going to be pretty crucial when using the TGP or the JHMCS. Now, real quick, we're not getting into the JHMCS just yet, but I want to show you guys how to turn it on. Just take this knob here and spin it, and then anytime you look away from center point of view, you will see the helmet mounted queuing system come up. Now, we'll talk about that further in just a minute, but the key that I want you guys to be aware of right now is the R or Romeo key on your keyboard, which will disable it with a single key press without having to worry about the power knob. Alright, so now let's take a look at a few more controls. So some controls that are going to be very crucial for you when using the TGP. First, you have the RAID field of view button. That is the I or India key on your keyboard. The radar elevation buttons, these are also crucial. These will allow you to zoom in and out very quickly. The R key that we just talked about is the Recce event marker switch. You'll want all of your sensor select switches mapped. As again, they become very crucial based on switching sensors between the TGP, the JHMCS, and the Maverick screen, for example. Obviously, you want your weapons release. You'll want your target undesignate button. And let me just make sure I'm not missing anything for you guys. You'll need your trigger, obviously bound, if it's not, but I would assume it is. Your target designator button. Okay, so this is actually designating a point on the ground or in space that is a target. And then finally, depending on how you guys choose to do it, I prefer an axis. I have the Thrustmaster Warthog and it's got a mouse on it. But you'll want your throttle designator controller axis bound and configured as well. Now, some people struggle with this portion, so I'll show you guys what I use. Here's the configuration that I use. Now, I do have a modified TDC with a larger thumbstick on it, so keep that in mind that mileage may differ based on your experience and what your hardware is, right? So you may have to tweak these a bit in order to get it comfortable. Let me see if I'm missing anything right off the bat here. I don't think so. I think we got everything, but let me double check. Whoa, what happened there? That was weird. I already touched that one. Okay. No, we don't need to worry about that just yet. I think we got everything that I'm concerned with at the moment. Oh, cage uncage button, that's going to be a big one too. Now that's not so critical for today's tutorial, but this will be very handy, for example, when you're switching between the TGP and the Maverick, you need to uncage the Maverick. So just throw that on there right now if you are someone who's currently mapping controls. Alright, now let's get into the operation of the targeting pod. Alright, so getting into the functionality of the targeting pod, there's a few things that we're going to want to do first, and that's make sure that A, it's powered on. Now, if you're doing a hot start like we did here today, we started up in the air, chances are, as long as it's on board, it's already started. But you have your FLIR power switch here. You have off, standby, and on. You want to make sure it's in the on position in order to obviously operate it. Here we have Lima Tango Delta Romeo. This is Laser Target Designator Ranger. You can only set it to arm once the master arm is turned on. And here we have LST and NFLIR. This is for night FLIR, and the laser search track is the primary purpose of which we'll use this one at the moment. Let's go ahead and clear the stick out, and let's get rid of the moving map. Now, the targeting pod can be brought up on either one of the DDIs or on the AMPCD. AMPCD does bring some better functionality, as long as you don't mind. I prefer to get rid of the stick, and you have to sort of look down on it, but it's got its pros and cons. So one of the pros for it is, so you'll hit your OSB 18 on either one of these to bring up the TAC menu, as you can see here. You can see that TAC there. And then you can hit FLIR on either one of these. Now, the cool part about the AMPCD is it offers a much better clarity, if you will, of the target space down below, especially when using CCD, or basically TV mode, if you will. But you can tap that, it goes into FLIR mode, and again, it's still, I will absolutely admit, it's much easier to see. However, even with things like Track IR or even in VR, sometimes it can be kind of a pain in the butt to get your eyes on it. Your head is way down when looking at it, so that's something, a concerning point you want to be aware of, where if you're up looking at the DDI, you can sort of do this and still get some situational awareness of what the aircraft is doing. But there are ways around that, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up on the right DDI for now. Now, this is one of the drags. You can see you get that very bright, very powerful green background, but I promise you get used to it for those of you who aren't already familiar with it. So let's zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to adjust my camera to make this a bit easier, and then see if I can zoom in as well. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a walk around the block on the inside of the screen, going through all the different displays and numbers that are showing up here, and then we'll take a look at the different OSBs and what they have to offer for us. Okay? So I think the best way, I'm just sort of going to start from the center and work our way out. Obviously here we have our center point for the targeting pod. These 4 angle brackets here indicate the field of view you will see if you switch the field of view from wide to narrow. So if we were to go into the narrow view, anything inside these 4 corners is what we would actually see on the full MFD here, or DDI. Here we have the range scale, or yard scale. And what this is it's showing the distance from right here, this point, to the end of this point here. So one of these arms is 69 meters. Now you're going to see this number change based on how you zoom in and out. That number is either going to decrease or increase, again, based on what the range change is, or the view scaling is, I should say. Okay. Moving out here, you have your bank angle. Okay, this is as well as your VVR flight path indicator. Now, the flight path indicator obviously isn't giving you a reference of where the aircraft is currently pointing. It's giving you a reference as to what the deviation between left, right, up, and down is. The bank angle here obviously is going to change. The more this reduces one direction or the other, the more severely you are banking the aircraft. And you will also see it pitch one direction or the other. Keep in mind, this is the horizon line. So for example, if I were to bank my wings to the right, this end would actually go up and this end would go down. It's giving you a representation of the horizon, not the aircraft wings. A lot of people get very confused with that. So, and it is sort of one of those things that you sort of had to get used to over time, of getting your brain used to seeing it that way. Because anytime we see them pitch up and down, and it's kind of crazy when you think about it. For me, I'm sort of shocked that they did it like this, but I guess it does have a purpose. You obviously want to know where the ground is, not necessarily where your wing is. But anyway, I digress. The more you see it and you get used to looking at it correctly, and you know, getting the proper orientation that it provides to you. And this is one of those workarounds that you can use when using the AMPCD down below, is that yes, you lose the field of view outside the cockpit window quite a bit, but you still get some visual references on the screen if you choose to know what the aircraft is doing. Here we have -8 degrees. This means that the aircraft or the TGP is currently sitting -8 degrees below the bore side of the aircraft, so coming directly off the nose. If 0 degrees is a camera right at the very tip of the nose of this aircraft, the TGP by default is looking -8 degrees down. Okay. And then here on the longitudinal side of things, we have a 0 degree line with an L. That just indicates that currently there is no deviation left or right. And this diamond right here is the visual reference on the TGP screen that lets you know what direction the TGP is looking in reference to the aircraft. So for example, if this diamond was over here in this corner, that would tell me that my target area is to the left of the aircraft, right? And roughly that obviously is going to change, and you're going to be able to tell that as you're searching your battle area. Over here, we have the north arrow ground plane. There's two lines on top of each other. One's got an arrow right here that you can kind of see, and the other one's just a solid line. The regular line indicates the ground plane relative to the FLIR. So as this pitches left and right, up and down, that is the flat plane of the ground in reference to how the camera is currently positioned. And then finally, the bottom or the arrow is always pointing north. Now, the further the TGP goes downward into the terrain, the longer this arrow will get. The arrow line will get, letting you know how far down the TGP is looking, again, from reference to bore site. Okay. Me personally, I'm going to be honest. The AOA indicator and the north arrow ground plane, I don't typically use very often. Typically, I'll turn them off when I can. And I'll show you guys how to do that here in just a minute, so stay with me. All right. Coming up here, we have the longitude and latitude of where the TGP is currently centered on. So, for example, right in the center of this box is in degrees, minutes, and decimal minutes is our longitude, and then latitude is going to be, again, degrees, minutes, decimal minutes, and then you can see we're at 787 feet above mean sea level, and I believe that's based on the current altimeter. Okay, let's see here. What else am I missing here? I don't think I've got anything that I missed inside the screen. Here we have the aircraft's airspeed in Mach. So we're currently doing 310 knots, equaling Mach 0.52. And I think that's it for inside. Here we have our UFC code UFC code, laser target designator code of 1688. We'll go over that more in a second, but it is inside the screen, so I figured I'd touch on it. All right, so that's everything inside the screen. Now let's take a spin around the block and look at all the different options around it, okay? All right, so starting up here at the top, we have the current targeting pod mode. You have operate or standby. You have the current field of view. You can see this is wide. You can give that a tap and it switches into narrow, and this is where those 4 boxes I was telling you about come into play. So again, switching into narrow, notice the 4 corners are gone, but now we have a much, much closer field of view. The freeze freezes the current FLIR image. So even if the aircraft, and I can show you guys that real quick, if we unpause, notice that the TGP is moving, but if I hit that freeze button, it freezes the image and turns that real sheet almost highlighted green. Okay, so that's a big indicator that, you know, you're freezing an image. Now if we unfreeze it, it's going to update to where it currently is. Okay, put us back into a pause for a minute. And then coming around here, we have our reticle. You can actually turn the reticle on and off if you wish. Then you have VVSLV. This is vertical velocity, not vertical velocity. Why can I not think right now? It's your flight path indicator slave. I cannot think. VVI is what it is. Why am I missing what the term is? Oh, mercy. Why is this getting me right now, guys? Why is this getting me right now? Velocity vector indicator. Gosh, mercy, I knew it was on the tip of my tongue. So velocity vector slave is what this is. So what that does is when we tap that, if I come back up to the HUD for a minute, and let's, actually we don't need to do that, just need to zoom back out. This is our VVI, or also known as flight path marker, flight path indicator. You know, we've all called it about a billion different things. But what this does is if we tap that, notice the camera now zoomed up. So it's literally looking right in the center of this. So wherever this is pointed, that's where the TGP is going to lock onto. And then what you can do is press your TDC button when it's over the target, your TDC lock button or depress button, and it will designate whatever this is on as your current target. Real handy if you're making, you're flying over an AO, you suddenly see a target as you're diving down, or you quickly need to change targets. This is a real handy way to do it. I don't recommend it as a primary method of target acquisition. And there are much easier ways that I'll show you guys in just a minute on acquiring, but this is real handy if you're diving in on a target and you notice a higher priority target, right? This is a much easier way to designate that. The other thing that's real nice for this, I'll give you an example, is SAM hunting. You're flying down low, you can only pop up for a quick second, you're waiting for them to launch, you've got a wingman up, he does, Wild Weasel, you see the missile launch, you can put this on, put your VVI on where the missile launch was and target designate, and that'll get you close enough to where you can acquire where the SAM is coming from. Just a couple examples on when you might want to use that particular method that I have found is really advantageous. So let's scroll back down here. Let me get us back set up. Wow. All right. It's been a Monday, guys. So the thing is that I'm in Arizona, and Arizona doesn't actually respect daylight savings time, but I work for a company that is countrywide. Actually, he'll help anyone really. So the drag is that when the rest of the world is adjusting to it, I typically don't have to. All I do is have to get up earlier. So my shift changed from getting up at 5:30 to 4:30 in the morning, and I don't like mornings. Never have. Anyway, let's get back to work here. So that's how the VVSL works, and the nice thing is once you turn it back off, the TGP will resume to its previously designated target unless you designate a position. So because we did not designate a new target when I disengaged that, it went back to its previous position. Okay, code for UFC, if we give that a tap, let me back out a little bit because we're going to need to be able to see the UFC here. Let's move things over. There we go. Oh. If we give that a tap, you can see here we have LSTC, which is laser track search, or laser search track. Now the reason for that is two things. One, we have to make sure master arm is on, but two, we are not in air to ground mode. So if I go to air to ground mode, now this is the drag by air to ground mode. When you switch, it activates the air to ground radar, which we'll go over in another video. We go back into our FLIR, and oh, sorry. I just realized what I'm missing. That has nothing to do with it. We're missing this. I told you guys. We had to make sure master arm was on. We were in air to ground mode. And then now we can flip this on. Laser target designator. And notice, now it pops up. So, again, forgive me. I knew I was missing something there. So, it's all coming back to me now. Anyway. So, by selecting laser target designator, we can now change our code. So, let's say we want to do 1653. You can see now the code changes down here, but our laser search track did not change. Now we're going to take a real brief moment to understand the difference. The code here is the code our TGP will emit when firing the laser. Okay, it's real important to recognize this distinction. The code here is the code the TGP will search for if someone else is using their laser. What we have is buddy lasing. So if you've got either boots on the ground or another aircraft doing AFAC, and he fires his laser and he says you can track laser on 1688, we can engage laser search track mode. I'll show you guys that real quick. And what the TGP is doing, even though we can't see it, is actually searching the area. Okay, it's sweeping back and forth, back and forth. Now, you still have to make sure your aircraft's pointed in the same general direction as where it needs to be looking. But if there was an aircraft or any kind of laser source firing at 1688 code, it would actually lock onto it and guide us to the target. Okay, now let's disable that for now. And then gray is a grayscale bar that makes it a little bit easier, depending on how you like to use it, to adjust your gain and, what's the word I'm looking for? Gain and brightness, to make the screen more comfortable for your eyes, and I'll show you guys how to do that in just a minute. So maybe we'll come back to this one. The declutter, I use this religiously. Again, it turns much of this stuff, gets rid of the black box down below, and gets rid of the AOA indicator. Okay, we just talked about what LST is, and then you have CCD, which you tap in that, switches over to the FLIR mode. From the FLIR mode, this is the auto level gain. And then what we can do here, you can also type the autofocus button. I don't know if it actually does anything yet. But then from here, what we can do is you see this where it says zoom. Okay, from here we can manually control your zoom, or you can use your radar elevation controls after you've made your TGP your sensor of interest. So we're going to hit sensor select right, and you can see now that we have that diamond, if I use my radar elevation controls, I can zoom in and out again. Remember I told you about the meter number changing for the yard arm, giving you a visual reference on how long something is or what the distance is from one point to another maybe. Okay, and there's a lot more to this that we'll talk about later. But we can come over to the zoom, and we can tap that, and now we're into level mode. Okay, so we can change the level. You can adjust it down, make it real dark. You can come over here, go to gain, and use the gain to sort of clear it up as you deem fit, whatever's most comfortable for your eyeballs. I actually tend to run a pretty low level unless I actually need to, with a bit higher gain, or actually lower gain, excuse me. I try to make it work from here, but that gain can be really brutal, or that level can be brutal. But anyway, you guys get the gist. And then from here we can switch from white hot to black hot. So objects that are hot or reflecting temperature will display as black, and then objects that are hot or displaying temperature will display as white. Okay, so it's all depending on what you're looking at, what the background is, what the terrain behind it looks like, as far as which one you'd want to use. Up here now that we've armed the laser target designator, you can see it says laser arm, and we got a few more things that popped up. Well, one more thing that popped up here. Alright, so if we push this trigger button, now if we squeeze the trigger, nothing happens. Okay, and the reason being is you have to have a target designated. So if we use our TDC, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, we can pick anything we want, we just need to designate it. So there's a squirrel in this tree that he's got to go. Taking one too many acorns. So, I can show you guys real quick how some of this works nicely. Is we can now use our India key or I key on our keyboard, and that will allow us to switch into our narrow field of view. We can zoom in further or zoom out if we needed to. Alright, and then I'm going to use my TDC depress command to designate the target, and that's indicated by the closed diamond here. Okay, we can see our distance now, 5.4 miles to the target. And now if I squeeze that trigger, you can see now you have to hold the trigger down. Watch where that L arm changes. And now you can see it's going laser target designate ranger. Okay. So real simple way to fire a laser. Now you would have to maintain this if you were using a laser guided Maverick or any laser guided munition such as the GBU-12, anything like that. So make sure that you hold this down until you have impact. Okay. So just something to think about, but a real quick demonstration. We'll see more of how this works here in a little bit. It's kind of a long video, but it's going to go over quite a bit. All right, and then finally, since we are on the topic, to undesignate a target, and actually I don't think I covered this in your controls, so let's talk about that for a second. To undesignate a target, you want your nose wheel steering button, okay, which is S on the keyboard, or Sierra, and in which case we just give that a tap, and the TGP resumes its previous position where we first brought it down, and then you can hit, oh, I'm not sure why that did that. That's interesting. Why is that switching over there? Why is that changing to LST mode? Huh, I'll be darned. I don't remember doing that before. You can tap your undesignate button again, and it will center the TGP. Okay? So, real brief, well, tried to be brief, but a walkthrough on the basic functionality of the TGP. Now, let's take some looks into how to use it effectively to quickly get onto a target area. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at how to use the TGP to employ on some targets. Employ? Employ? I'm not even going to try it. You guys know what I mean. Let's go back to our task menu. Let's go back to FLIR. I'm going to use sensor select right once again to select our right DDI and verify that our diamond is up here, indicating this is our sensor of interest for our target designator or throttle designator, however you want to put it. Now, there's a couple of real easy ways to acquire a target area. if you have a waypoint entered as your target area, this is probably one of the easiest ways to get your TGP in the general vicinity. But we can go, for me it's waypoint 3, and then what I can do, come down here, let me unzoom here. What I can do here is hit this weapon designate, okay, and we can tap that. You can see the switches up to target up here, and we can see our TGP is now in the target area, okay. Now, let's go ahead and unpause the aircraft, and we'll start steering towards the general area while using our controls to acquire a target. Now, as we're turning towards, one of the things that you want to be aware of is masking the TGP. So if we bank it hard over, you can see what the TGP is doing. It's looking at the fuselage of the aircraft. So we have to make sure we keep our bank angle and aircraft position in a way that TGP can always see the target. Now we're only 4 miles away, so you got to be real careful here. This is going to happen pretty quick. But I can now hit my field of view button. We can zoom in on it. I can move my TGP over. I can zoom in on a specific target. Now I'm going to go back into an active pause for a second so you guys can see a couple things. One of the things that you want to watch for is if we hit sensor select right in this case. Now, this particular method allows us to switch between point track and area track, and let's talk about those for a second. Point track is going to be very useful for high contrast objects, vehicles, planes, anything on the ground that's giving off a high contrast compared to the terrain down below. Okay, and what we can do is use our sensor select on whichever MPCD or DDI, excuse me, that we have it set to. So in our case, we have it on the right. So I'm going to tap sensor select right again, and you can see we're in area track, and you can see how the target gates open up a bit. And then we can click it again and go into point track, and you can see these two little vertical lines. This indicates point track. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my target designate button. So TDC depress. Okay, and you can see it closes a gate in it, but we also get a secondary crosshair inside of it. This is called the target offset, and this is real useful if, for example, if we had a building as our reference point. Okay, so we put the TGP onto our building, and then next to the building, let's say there was a Jeep or some sort of high value target, we would then move this, which is our offset cue. Notice the TGP isn't moving. So it's just, if you want, you use the TGP to get into the general vicinity, very close range, and then you use your target offset cue to fine-tune the target. And once we fine-tune our target, for example, let's say it's actually the truck behind this guy, we would then hit our TDC depress again, and this has now become our new target. Okay? And when we employed our weapon, it would actually strike the vehicle in the rear. Now, giggity. Anyway, I'm sorry, I had to throw my little moment in there. I'm immature at heart. What do you want? So then up here to talk to you guys about what we were talking about earlier. Notice the diamond is now over here. Okay, this is letting us know that our target area is actually still off to the right of the nose of the aircraft, and it's 28 degrees off to the right. Okay, so it's real helpful information when you're trying to position yourself on a target. Like if you needed, for example, a 90-degree offset, you could just keep flying straight until this reached 90 degrees or 85 degrees, whatever, and then turn inbound on your target to approach from the correct direction if you needed to. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you guys is we're going to undesignate our target. So I hit our nose wheel steering button. I'm going to go back into the wide field of view. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do, I think I have them turned off. So let me turn the labels on. And you can see our targets here. Okay, so there's our target area. Now, if I unclick it, there you go. This time, we're going to use our vertical velocity slave that I was telling you guys about. So we're going to put that on there. Okay, we box velocity vector slave. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to unpause and I'm going to steer the velocity vector onto our targets. So it's going to happen pretty quick. So we're in so close, but you guys will catch the gist. So slaving it over, and watch the camera. I'm going to watch the aircraft where it's flying, but you guys watch the TGP. And I'm going to hit my target designate. And you can now see that as I pull up, the TGP remains in the position. So like I said, that can be very helpful. Oh, we are under fire. I didn't think that they were set to shoot. Okay. Look at you guys getting froggy. Anyways, so it's really handy, like I said, when you need to very quickly either acquire a target or change targets. This can be a very handy method to do so, especially if you're already on the attack run and need to change targets at that point. Now, notice we've lost any tracking of that target, and again, that's probably due to the angle offset. It's at 184 degrees off. So if we come back around, and forgive my track IR, it's been a real pain in the you-know-what lately. So it may flicker out or wig out for a second there, and you just have to bear with me. But once we get the targets back in the TGP's field of view, once where the camera can get it, so basically back inside the gimbal limits, it will reacquire the previous position. Mercy. I cannot talk today. So those are probably my two favorite ways of getting the TGP on target. But now let's talk about the JHMCS, or Joint Helmet Mounted Queuing System, because this makes it significantly easier to do this. Okay, when you're like in an orbit of a battlefield and you're searching for targets, again, if you see a SAM launch or something like that, this makes it very, very easy to do this. So let's get into that for a second. All right, so getting into the Joint Helmet Mounted Queuing System, we're going to turn it back on because I reset the aircraft. And then now you can see it pops up, and wherever I look, that's what we get. Now, forgive me, it's attached to my track IR, so if it moves around a little bit, I apologize. I'm going to try to keep my head still. Down here at the bottom, it's basically a HUD repeater in many ways. Okay, we have our AOA, we have our Mach current G load on the aircraft, and max G load in its current configuration. Distance to the target, we have a target reticle here in the center. Now notice this is changing. Again, this is degrees or bearing of where the aircraft's headed. So just keep that in mind. Bearing from the target. I'm sorry. I need to be more specific. That's why I paused. It just dawned on me what I said. So notice as we're pulling away, we're now 100 degrees off from where we're looking from our target. We can also see the flashing reticle here indicating, hey, your target's over here. And same thing with the arrow line here, again, telling us what direction our target is. These here are RWR repeaters, letting us know of the RWR sources. Obviously, you have your heading tape, and that heading tape is in reference to which way, again, you're looking, okay? And then you have the vertical as well here up at the top, letting you know what the vertical degrees of offset is. And then right here is the aircraft's current heading of 063 degrees, current airspeed, current altitude. Okay, so all that's pretty black and white and pretty easy. And then again, once you turn on the target area, then you can see it. Now there's a couple of really neat things that we can do here. Now keep in mind, our TGP is still our sensor of interest. So we can see our target over here, but let's say we needed to be over here by this building. We can actually move the target designator. Now obviously this is a lot easier when the aircraft is paused. Now I'm going to show you something else here. It's moving so slow because of our zoom level. If I zoom way out, okay, we can accelerate that a little bit. So the further zoomed in you are, the slower the targeting reticle is going to move. But let's say we wanted to be on that right there. We can come down, and assuming our fuselage wasn't in the way, let's get it out of the way for a second. I'm just going to bank her hard over for a second. And then let's rotate out. Okay, and then let's do another pause here. So now you can see how quickly I was able to change the target area. Now, it gets even easier than this, okay? One of the cool things that we can do here is if we undesignate our target, okay? Oh, sorry, I accidentally tapped the record button. You can see that now that I've undesignated the target, our targeting reticle is gone, okay? And there's no way to target anymore other than going back to our TGP. Well, that's not exactly true. So what we can do here is, much like we use sensor select switch right to select our right DDI, if we go sensor select forward to select the HUD, okay, and then move our JHMCS down, you can see now we have this targeting reticle here. Now this is really awesome again, especially when you're orbiting, you're doing close air support, or for any reason need to quickly switch to a visual target. We can now use our TDC or our Joint Helmet Mounted Queuing System put it over another target area, tap our TDC depress, and we've just designated a new target. So really handy way to quickly acquire a target. And again, once that's done, you're still able to use the TGP or move the targeting reticle around. Now the cool thing about this is that because it's set to the HUD, notice how fast the targeting reticle is moving. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the joint helmet mounted queuing system. There really isn't a whole lot to it, but it has a ton of benefits. And again, just simply press your undesignate button to get back to the targeting reticle. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you guys just a couple of quick tricks that you can do with the TGP that make things a little bit easier. So first off, your RAID field of view button, as you guys know, will switch between narrow and wide. But if you press it and hold it, you can switch between FLIR mode and the TV mode. So I think that's better demonstrated down here on the AMPCD. So again, here we're in the TV mode. Press and hold, we're in the FLIR mode. So makes it really handy for doing things like that. And then I think there was one other one that I wanted to show you guys. Maybe not. I think we actually covered everything, didn't we? Got the point track, we got area track, got the sensor control directions. Alright, cool. Yeah, no, I guess that is it. Alright, so the final thing that we're going to do here is demonstrate a Maverick launch using the TGP and the joint helmet mounted queuing system. Because what would DCS video be without something blowing up? So first thing we'll do is turn our joint helmet mounted queuing system on. We're going to come downstairs as well and make sure that our laser target designator is on. If we're in air to ground mode, that's very helpful. And I'm sorry about the weird thing my head tracker does. That's what I was telling you guys about. My track IR is having issues lately. Okay, so now we're going to bring our FLIR up on the right DDI. We're going to make sure our Maverick is set. Now with the Maverick, we're using the AGM65E, which is the laser guided Maverick. We're going to go to UFC. We're going to hit code. As long as both missiles are boxed, you'll see the code change for both missiles. 1656 is going to be our laser code today. We'll come over to our TGP as well. Hit laser target designator there and type the 1656 there as well. The blinking indicates, as you saw them doing there for a minute, indicates that there's a code mismatch between the weapon system and the targeting pod. Okay, so that's sort of an alert in case that's an issue. Now, next thing we'll do is go down and select our target waypoint, weapon designated, to get our TGP over in the general area. We're a little off kilter there, so we're going to come around. We're 12 miles out. Sensor select right to make our TGP a sensor of interest. India key on our I key on our keyboard. Now notice before, when we hit I on our keyboard, it would change the field of view from wide to narrow. If a Maverick is boxed or selected, this will no longer function for the TGP. As you have to remember, the AGM65F is a TV guided missile and it has two field of views as well. The weapon system field of view change will always take precedence over the targeting pod. So when you have a Maverick selected or a TV guided weapon of that nature, you need to manually change your field of view, but everything else works as it did before. Did I just hit pause instead of active pause? I did. Alright, so we're going to give that a tap. Now, when designating your target when using the laser, I recommend pointing it more or less at the bottom of your target, as the laser doesn't actually know the vehicle's there. So when you come around to the other side of it, it will point past it. So now we have our location set, target designate, depress again. Okay, and then now we're going to make sure trigger is boxed so the weapon fires the laser. Make sure our Maverick is up and displayed. Select the cage uncage. Squeeze the trigger to fire the laser. You can see that LTDR. And okay, so the weapons release button doesn't always work when it's doing this. So what you can do is let go of the laser real quick until the missile fires, then fire the laser again. Now, once the laser is tracking, you can actually let go of the laser button. It works as a toggle at that point. So at this point, we can make our TGP sensor of interest, zoom out, and enjoy the show. I'm willing to bet we take out a few of them with this one. Again, make sure that whatever you have to do, the aircraft maintains track of that target until it is destroyed. Boom, and there's a shack. Alright, so now you can see that the laser automatically turned itself off. Now you'll also have to come back here and return it back on if you want to employ it on another target. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and go sensor select forward. Go to our target undesignate button. And again, move that like so. Once you have your TGP in this general vicinity, remember that right now it's using the HUD as our guidance. Make sure you hit sensor select right and rinse and repeat. So we're going to come in here, target designate, laser's armed, and we're going to try to do this very quickly. Yeah, I know I'm stalling. I was trying to slow down. Sensor select left to select the Mavic screen. Uncage it. Oh no, I didn't hit the trigger button. And these are the little things that will get you. Oh, let's see if we get it. That was really dumb. And we got it. So that's the cool part, is even if you lose laser track for a second, as long as you get it back quickly enough, the missile or bomb will still acquire. Happens all the time with the GBUs especially. But anyway, guys, I know that was kind of a sloppy attack, but I just wanted to show something blowing up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little tutorial. I hope it clears some things up for you guys. If you have any questions and comments, by all means, leave them down below. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the content, and then hit that bell for notification of future content to come. Without anything else, guys, I will see you all in the next one, and have a good night.